Hey YouTube family, hope everyone is doing wonderful. We're gonna get to part 11 here with the Third Testament. If you have not seen the other Third Testament videos, please go to our channel. We have a playlist. We're lining them up one after the other. We are now on part 11, and I am doing shorter videos because people are short on time, and sometimes just processing smaller bits of information before receiving the next piece can help you to soak that information in. So we're going to go with a little bit shorter pieces. Okay, so let me say though, those of you who have liked and subscribed to the videos and to the channel, we thank you so much because we're just doing this to get this information out because it has been so helpful in my life, my husband's life, and everybody that we have shared it with over the past decade. And we feel like it came to us truly through the hands of God, and it's helped us so much. So hope that it helps you. We just ask that you have an open mind and we take this in a way that's of help and love. Okay, so we're starting on page 40 from teaching number 25. These teachings are obviously a little bit they're not all right in the same order, but the information is kind of generalized versus a linear book, so I think it works okay. How ignorant of the spiritual teaching I find this humanity. And it is because it has been taught that my law and my doctrine are only a morality and will be of use as an aid, and not as the path that will guide its spirit toward the perfect mansion. In the second era, the divine master moved away from his disciples for a few hours, and on returning, he observed that they were deliberating and asked them, "What have you learned from my doctrine?" And one of them answered, "Master, when you are not with us, we study your words, but not always are we able to understand." The master then said to them, "Contemplate the ocean. Observe that it is immense. That is how the law of the Father is, since it is the beginning and the end of everything created. But I will grant that you comprehend as much as my will." And that's what I think that the Third Testament is doing. It's just giving us more knowledge, more, perception on what Jesus was speaking of, and spiritual knowledge from the Bible. Some who are confused ask me, "Lord, by chance is the love among humans illicit and abominable before you, and you only approve of spiritual love?" I respond, "Do not be confused. It is true that the highest elevation and purest love corresponds to the Spirit. But in the flesh, I also placed a heart so that it would give its love on earth. And I gave man the senses so that through them he could enjoy everything that surrounds him. I confided the human life to the spirits so that they could come to inhabit the earth and once in it, put to the test their love for God. For that purpose, I divided the human nature of man into two parts, giving the strongest to some and the more fragile to others. Those parts are the male and the female. Only united can they be strong and happy. For that I instituted the marriage. The human love is blessed by me when it is ennobled by the love of the Spirit. The love felt only by the flesh is characteristic of irrational beings because they lack a conscience which illuminates the lives of rational beings. From the unions full of spiritual comprehension, good fruits must emerge, and spirits of light will incarnate in them. When the spirit of a great sinner departs from this material existence to enter the spiritual realm, he is surprised to discover that hell, as he has imagined, does not exist, and the fire of which he was told in times past is no more than the essence of his deeds, which he finds before the exonerable judge, which is his conscience. That eternal judgment, that clarity which is evident amidst the darkness which involves that sinner, burns more intensely than the most scorching fire you could ever conceive. But it is not a previously prepared torture as a punishment for whoever offended me. No, instead, that torment comes from the knowledge of the faults he has committed, of the sorrow for having offended the one who gave him life, and of having put to bad use the time and many benefits he received from the Father. Do you believe that I should punish who offended me because of his sin when I know that sin is more harmful to whoever commits it? Do you not see that the sinner causes harm to his own self, and that I shall not argument with his punishment, the misery he has brought upon himself? I only allow that he examine himself and pay heed to the voice of his conscience, that he questions and answers within himself, that he recovers his spiritual memory that through the flesh he had lost, and that he remembers his beginning, his destiny, and his promises. And there, within that judgment, he will have to experience the effect of fire that will exterminate his iniquity, that will fuse him anew like a gold in a crucible, in order to remove from him that which is harmful, superfluous, and all that is not spiritual. When the Spirit pauses to hear the voice of his conscience, truly I say to you, at that moment, he is before my presence. Boy, let me tell you, when I got to that point where everything I had did and said that I realized was so in my ego and selfish and all of these things, I can tell you this is what it's like. This is what it was like for me. You know, just crying and sadness and just, you know, a sickness in my stomach of how could I have, you know, done those things. And I remember when it all hit, and it was great to go through asking for forgiveness, going to anyone I could and asking them for forgiveness, and just going through the whole purification process of really making right those wrongs. But boy, let me tell you, when that punch in the gut, when your conscience just gets to that point where it clicks and you no longer see those things the same, where you may have justified what you did before, thought, you know, you had a good reasoning or whatever, but once the consciousness hits a certain spot, you know, you just realize, yeah, that wasn't it. And so I can understand what he's saying. It's a very tough time that I went through. Okay, let's continue. That moment of quietness, serenity, and clarity does not always reach all spirits at the same time. Some promptly submit to their self-examination, thereby avoiding much bitterness, because the moment they awaken to reality and acknowledge their faults, they prepare themselves and they are disposed to amend, up to the last, their unrighteous deeds. Always telling you that if you recognize what you've got going on and handle it, you're going to have a whole lot better situation going on for however long that you have on this earth and when you pass over to the spiritual. So it's, you know, worth going through that and getting to the other side, and it's going to, you know, be a wonderful thing for you on all levels. It says, others take long in coming out of their confusion, be it because of their vice, for some rancor, or from having lived some life of sin. Others the more unsatisfied, and believing to have been taken from them from earth before their time, when life smiled upon them, swear and curse, thus retarding their being able to free themselves from their confusion. And like these, there are a great number of cases which only my wisdom perceives. Neither are there specific places conceived by me exclusively for expiation of faults committed by my children. I say to you that no mansion exists where I have not deposited my wonders and blessings. Have you not said that the world in which you live is a valley of tears, that is, a valley of restitution? And who made it to the valley of tears, God or man? I created it in the image of a celestial paradise, endowing it with wonders and pleasures, even thinking of the smallest and most insignificant things in order to assure your happiness. Nevertheless, in a world created in such a manner, for its well-being and progress, for the enjoyment and spiritual elevation of mankind, men still suffer, weep, become desperate, and become strayed. But I repeat to you again that I did not create this world for the suffering of man. The worlds are what their inhabitants make of them. The worlds are what their inhabitants make of them. Behold how man has concealed the truth with his misleading interpretations, and how different he has interpreted the figurative meaning of what the spiritual life has revealed to him. No darkness, nor fire, nor chains exist within the immense spiritual valley. Remorse and torments which result from the need for knowledge and suffering due to the lack of spirituality to enjoy that existence. This and more exists in the expiation of the spirits who reach the threshold of the spiritual life unprepared and blemished. Behold that I cannot regard as offensive the imperfections and perversity of man, knowing full well that they only harm themselves. Neither has the earth been tarnished. She is as noble and clean as when she emerged from the Creator. For that reason, I do not ask that you give back her former purity, since she has not deviated from her destiny of being a mother, a refuge, and a home for humanity. Instead, I will ask humanity to repent, to regenerate, and purify themselves in body and spirit. In other words, that they return to their original purity by manifesting in their spirit the light gained through their evolution, struggles, and practice of virtue. And here is a parable. I like parables. A spirit filled with light, purity, and innocence, finding himself before God, asked, "Father, tell me what my mission is, for I wish to serve you." The Father gently replied, "Wait. I will unite a man and woman on earth, and from that union a child will be born, in which you will incarnate. In that manner, by being the Son of Man, you will gather experience in the tribulations of the world and intimately feel the tenderness of the mother and caress of the Father." The Spirit joyously awaited. In the meantime, the Father joined a man and woman with bonds of love and thus sent them along the path of life. A new being was conceived within the womb of the woman. Then God sent that Spirit to incarnate in that body. And on the 9th month, he saw a light in the world. The mother smiled with happiness, while the father was filled with pride. That child was a blessed event for both, for it was the fruit of their love. The woman felt strong, while the man felt somewhat like his Creator. Both dedicated themselves to the devotion of that tender heart. The Spirit who animated the child smiled as he beheld the sweet gaze of his mother and the severe, and at the same time, tender face of the Father. At the same time, tender face of the Father. Time elapsed, and the Father, in his struggles of life, abandoned his nest of love, taking sinuous paths. He went beyond himself until he became lost, leaving behind him shreds of his garments caught in the prickly shrubs. He took poisonous fruits and stripped the maidens of their virtue. Feeling himself sick and depressed, he remembered the two loved ones he had abandoned. He intended to return and search for them. However, his strength failed him. Then, mustering enough courage by dragging himself and stumbling along the lengthy journey, he reached the doors of his home, where his wife welcomed him with open arms and tears in her eyes. But the child was sick and in agony. The father, seeing his dying child, implored the divine charity for his recovery. Then he desperately pulled his hair and blasphemed. However, that spirit separated from the body and proceeded toward the beyond. The parents were desolate and made themselves responsible for the misfortune that afflicted them. He for having left, and she for not being able to detain him. When that spirit found himself before the presence of the Creator, he said, "Father, why have you separated me from the loving arms of that sweet mother, in which my absence has left her weeping and in despair?" To this the Father answered, "Be patient and await the moment in which you will return to that same bosom, when they have acknowledged their sins and understood my law." The man and woman continued in unity, in solitude, and inwardly repentant of their faults, when again they were surprised by the announcing of a new child. God again directed the Spirit to return to that bosom by saying, "Incarnate in that body which is preparing for a new existence, and be joyful to be within that bosom again." The parents who had regarded their firstborn as lost were not aware that he had returned to their bosom. However, the emptiness left by the first child was filled by the second. Happiness and peace returned to the bosom of the home. The mother smiled again, and the father was in a joyful mood. Now the man feared a separation from his family and tried to surround them with love by remaining near them. But in time, he forgot his past experience, and influenced by bad friends, he yielded to vice and temptation. The woman complained and began to reject him. That home was converted into a battleground. Soon the man felt defeated, sick, and weakened. Meanwhile, the woman, leaving the child in the cradle, would arise in search of bread for the innocent and sustenance of her companion, who did not love or care for her. She suffered humiliations and blasphemy, endured dangers, and challenged the instincts of men of bad faith. In that manner, she managed to provide daily bread for her loved ones. God had compassion for the innocent spirit, and before he could open his eyes to reason, he called him again. When the spirit was in the presence of the Father, he said with great grief, "Father, once again you have separated me from the arms of those whom I love. Behold, how difficult my destiny is. Today I implore you to either leave me in their bosom or in yours forever. However, do not allow me to pregnate anyone, for I am tired." Pregnate. When the man returned from his lethargy, he beheld a new scene of grief. His wife wept without consolation at the bedside of the second child who had died. Then the man attempted to take his own life, but his companion intervened and said, "Do not attempt against your life. Hold your hand and realize that we ourselves are the cause why God has taken our children." The man regained his senses, realizing that there was truth in those words. As each day passed, calm slowly came to the hearts who sorrowfully remembered the children who departed and had been joy of that home, which later became a place of desolation. The spirit then asked the father, "Father, are you going to send me to earth again?" The father answered, "Yes, again, and as many times as necessary, or until those hearts are cleansed." When the spirit incarnated again, his body was sick, and so were his mother and father. From his bedside, that spirit elevated himself to the Father in demand of healing. This time, he had not contemplated the light of the world. There were no smiles in his lips of his parents, only tears. The mother wept from morning till night near the cradle of the infant, while the repentant father felt his heart pierced from grief, seeing that the child had inherited his own ills. The presence of that spirit within that sick body was brief, thus returning before the presence of the Father. Once again, the couple experienced solitude. However, suffering had brought them together as never before. Their hearts showed devotion, and they promised to march in unity till the end. The man fulfilled his duties, and she in turn looked after her husband, and both were healed of their ills. They regarded it as difficult that God would again grant them another child. But behold, when the Father contemplated that the physical and spiritual health flourished within those beings, he sent them that spirit as their reward for the abnegation of one and the correction of the other. Then from the bosom of that woman there came into being a tender little body, as fragrant as a bud, who filled that home with happiness and peace. The man and the woman, weeping with joy, kneeled and gave thanks to God, while the patient and obedient spirit smiled through the body of the infant and said to God, "Father, do not separate me again from my parents, for there is peace in my home, love in their hearts, warmth in my cradle, milk and honey in the bosom of my mother. There is bread on the table, there is affection in my Father, and in his hands implements of work. Bless us." And the Father, with great joy in his spirit, blessed and left them united in a single body, a single heart, and only one will. Powerful story. So I think we can see what he's saying, that, we come back, we keep doing things not only for ourselves, but for the sake of others. And in the end, we're all purified. We all become better. So in the trials and tribulations, just keep your eyes focused on God, and just always remember everything is happening for your best and highest good. You just don't always see it that way. But it's all about helping us all to reach that higher state of being and to become closer to God. And he gives us time after time to do so. So that's what's great. But I know that we all want to get there as soon as we can, because the closer that we are to the Father and the more purified we are, the better our lives are going to be. Okay, so I thank you all for joining me again for another chapter chapter 11 we did tonight. So we will go to chapter, or our next video of, not chapter, a video 12. So I hope you will join us again. Thank you again for liking and subscribing. Love you all. Have a great day.